Okay, I think we're ready to go and start. It is 12 o'clock and I'd like to call the PUB Board Finance Committee meeting to order. We do have a quorum. And do we have any public comments?
No public comments.
No public comments. So then,
Although I'm going to point out, you're going to get yelled at for not speaking into the microphone.
okay, so we have no public comments, so we go ahead and move to the regular agenda. We have 4 items. The first item, presentation, discussion, and possible recommendation of the Brownsville Public Utilities Board's financial performance report for the period ending July 31st, 2024.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Mike Perez. I'm the Chief Financial Officer, and I'll be presenting the financial performance for PUB as of July 31, 2024. I'll be focusing just on the next three slides for this presentation. So here we've got the executive summary, which focuses on 7 categories, with each one having their own gauge meter, red representing poor, yellow average, and green good. So on the flow of funds, we did see that year to date, we generated $14.95 million to replenish the improvement fund. Our debt service coverage ratio is at 2.79 times, well above the 1.25 times minimum. So we're doing good there. Our FPEC has generated an over recovery of $11.94 million as of July 31, so we're doing good there as well. On the COB cash transfer, that came in at about $1.2 million over budgeted amount. So this is great news for the city of Brownsville and for PUB doing well. Personal expenses, we see that they are in line with the budget, while our non-personnel expenses are lower than budget at around $6.8 million year to date. So we're doing great. BPB's average bill is higher than the average MOU bill and lower than the average IOU bill for the 1,000 kWh user for the month of July. And so we're doing average. Now for the month of August, the Risk Oversight Committee did lower the FPEC rate by 20%. Here in September, again, the ROC Committee went ahead and reduced that rate an additional 20%, down to a 5.019 cents per 1,000 kWh, lowering that average bill per 1,000 kWh residential user to about $111.26. So we'll be shifting the gauge to doing to good in the coming months. On our CIP spending, we're still lagging. Year to date, we've only spent $29.19 million, representing 31.83% of the fiscal year 24 approved plan. Here in August, we did discuss with the board the different obstacles that we were facing in the CIP spending. The last metric here, all key financial metrics are currently in compliance, so we're doing good. Here we've got a condensed statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. This is in accordance with GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles. We're comparing last year's year-to-date actual to this year's year-to-date actual. So operating revenues year-to-date were $192,974,000. This represented about $382,000 decrease from last year's level. We did see that year-to-date sales did increase $9 million over last year, but then the board did authorize the use of $9.5 million in the rate stabilization funds to bring down that customers' production costs in November and December. Year-to-date operating expenses of $167,197,000. We did see an increase of $6,147,000 from last year. This is largely attributed to the increased personnel costs from the implementation of the compensation study, and we're also seeing an increase in depreciation expense. So now we arrive at operating income line 3 at $25,776,000. Once we back out the net non-operating revenues or expenses of $12,540,000, we arrive at income before capital contributions of $13,236,000. We did see a decrease in the net non-operating expenses of about $33.9 million from last year. And here again, the big difference is that we had the Tenaska Equity Fund distribution of $31.4 million in May of 2023. Continuing on, line 6, capital contributions were $8,948,000. So this brings our change or an increase in net position year to date of $22,184,000. Adding this to the net position at the beginning of the year, we end up with a net position at the end of the period of $474,793. And so here we've got a condensed summary of revenues and expenses. This is based on the flow of funds in accordance with the bond ordinance. We are comparing year-to-date actuals with year-to-date budget. So operating revenues of $193,744,000 were $4.6 million below budget. Now this line item here includes both the base rates and our fuel rates. So on the base rates, we did see an increase of $7.2 million, while the fuel and the off-system sales then contributed to an $11.8 million decrease. Other revenues year to date were $22,308,000. These were $4.4 million above budget. And this again represents some additional ancillary services and some additional interest earnings over the prior period. Gross revenues year to date were $216,083,000, $216,083,000. Once we back out fuel and SRWA of $71,992,000, we arrive at adjusted gross revenues of $144,090,000. This is the basis for the 10% city of Brownsville transfer calculation. So the city is entitled to $14,409,000 of that. Once we back out other requirements of $101,322,000, and also back out the COB usage of $5.2 million, we arrive at a balance available after requirements of $37,616,000. Once we back out the transfer to the COB net of their usage of $9,257,000, we arrive at a balance available for PUB usage or transfers out of $28,359,000. Those funds were then used to fund our CIP transfer, budgeted transfer of $13,408,000, leaving a balance of $14,950,000 to replenish our improvement fund. That concludes the presentation. Be glad to entertain any questions. No? Thank you. Wait for item number 2. Oh,
Yeah.
No actions required. Item number 2, presentation discussion by external auditor Burt McCumber Longoria LLP on their audit plan and timeline for BPUB's fiscal year 2024 audit.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members, committee. So BPUB's fiscal year 2024 is coming to a close at the end of this month. Burton McCumber Longoria LLP continues to serve as BPUB's external auditor. They are on their 3rd and final year of their contract. So here with us today, we have Jose Diaz, the audit manager, with Burton McCumber Longoria to provide the finance committee with their audit plan and timeline.
Good afternoon, board. They printed the audit plan. So I'm just gonna go over what we discussed. We met with your finance department last week. So we went and hashed out some dates estimates, right? So as of now, we're estimating to provide them our listing of the items that we will need for interim procedures as of by the end of this week. By the week of September 23, we're tentative to start the interim procedures. So we're gonna be focusing on test the controls and all those for the significant areas that we test control on an annual basis, and those are described at the bottom, right? The payroll, utilities, revenue, expenditures, general entries, and procurement process. So that's where we're gonna be focusing during our interim procedures. By the week of by September 30, that's the tentative inventory observation date. It hasn't been set yet. Your team's still discussing when it is, but they'll contact me and then we'll set up and we'll do those procedures then. By the week of October 7th, so we'll be sending out confirmations for anything that needs cash accounts, bonds, et cetera, et cetera. On November 1, it's estimated that that's the date that we will receive the trial balance. for us to start making our inputting into our system and start our planning for year-end field work. Year-end field work will be planned to start as of the first week of November, November 4th. We expect to complete those by the week of December 16th, right? Getting out. At the week of January 6th, we're expecting to get the first draft from your finance department. And we're expecting to present here to the finance committee the week of February 5th. And then, well, the February 5th finance committee meeting, and to present to the full board the following February 10th for the full board presentation. So that's what we're estimating and that it will take. Any questions? Questions? No?
I'll ask the question Patricio always used to ask. And do you need anything from us? Any problems? Any issues?
We will be sending questionnaires around October. So we'll be sending the regular questionnaires that
Yeah.
we send, right? So just look out for those.
But no other issues then?
As of right now, no.
Okay.
We haven't started the procedure, so we haven't. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item number 3. Presentation, discussion, and possible recommendation on the status of BPUB's electric rate study by NewGen Strategies.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Monica Cavazos, Director of Finance. We kicked off earlier this summer, an electric cost of service and rate study. We had done an RFP. We went through the process. The board selected a vendor, NewGen Strategies. And so they have kicked off this process. We started with their initial data requests that we submitted back in July. So this slide shows you just a little bit of the scope of work that was included in the RFP that we sent out. Pretty standard for a cost of service rate study. And so these are the various steps that each firm that submitted a proposal had to give us their plan for and agree to follow. So we've had a kickoff meeting last week with NewGen with several of the project team members and the executive team to talk about rate strategies and just the plan in general and the process. So it begins with them looking at the revenue requirements that we have. That includes our O&M and our CIP expenses. They then have to unbundle those costs by function. So they'll be looking at power supply or generation, the transmission and the distribution. Once they do that unbundling, then they do a sub classification. They classify the cost by demand, energy, customer cost. So cost causation, if you will, to show what portion of that the costs are allocated to. And then they go a little bit deeper and do the allocation among the customer classes, our residential and our commercial classes. And from there, then they get into the actual rate design. So this just shows some of the items, again, O&M, debt service, the city transfer, capital expenditures, reserves, all of that is included in the revenue requirements. And then there's different elements that apply to the production, the transmission, distribution, and the customer. And they, again, look at the different customer classes, residential, small commercial, large commercial, and municipal as well, to allocate those costs to the customer class. So the cost of service serves multiple purposes. They need to make sure that the revenue requirements are functionalized and classified, and that's the basis for cost-based rates. We want to ensure that we are recovering our costs properly through our rates. Part of the rate making process as well, and they met with the executive team, is to talk about policy decisions. Are there certain types of new rates or new offers that we want to make to the customer, maybe a low income rate, maybe a green rate. So those different kinds of things that they're considering. They want to incentivize behavior to create win-win scenarios. And so encouraging conservation by our customers. And they look at industry practices to align our cost of service with. They need to ensure that the rates collect sufficient revenue, that they support the utility's goals, and that we're using the resources in the most cost-effective manner. Again, they need to align the costs. So they follow rate design best practices. They have to look at the cost of service, the policies, our policies and strategies, our rate design to ensure that the rate plan that they come up with meets all of these requirements to align our costs, to categorize them, and to ensure revenue adequacy. That's the primary objective, right? To make sure that we are recovering all of the revenue to cover our costs. And so they are in the initial stages. They do have all the data requests. We did have the kickoff meeting and they have some additional data requests that they just submitted to us today. So we'll be providing some additional information and further discussions with the executive team and with the board as far as rate strategies and philosophies on what we want to see going forward. So we are in the early stages, but we'll be coming to you all and reporting periodically on the progress of the process. Any questions on this or?
No, do we have like a calendar, like a project calendar for this?
They do have we have a tentative timeline to have something by the end of December, early January,
Okay,
a preliminary report and a preliminary rate design.
I think it'd be good just to add a slide, kind of outlining that to see, what's the expected timeline and then where are they at in terms of them meeting expectations?
Yeah, the document that we received today does have a timeline in it. I just wasn't able to incorporate it in
No,
the
but
presentation,
Next time would be good.
but they do have something.
Great.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you.
No questions.
That's it.
Oh, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're on to the next item, item number 4, presentation of the Texas regulatory framework for electric markets and its impact on financial and strategic plans. Sounds like a handful.
It's a lot, but I'll try to make it less funny.
No, take your time.
So as you heard from Monica, so we have electric cost of service study. We also have the integrated resources plan going on. We've got the strategic plan that's going to be going on next year. And the year after that is our transmission cost of service. And all of these plans and studies that we do, they're really influenced by the regulatory environment that we operate in within ERCOT. So it's helpful to understand that regulatory background, how it developed and how it functions in order to provide good governance to us in those accepting these plans. The first is we are a very highly regulated industry. And so both the federal, state, and local level. And here is just some of the different bodies that regulate our different functions and what they regulate within our utility. And you can think of it that at the federal level, really the highest, the level of regulation, what they really regulate is a bulk electric system, mainly generation transmission through NERC standards and what's called TRE, or Texas Regulatory or Texas Resource Entity. The next is a state, which is the PUC and ERCOT. And it mainly regulates the transmission and the wholesale market participation. That's the PUC and ERCOT. And finally, the local level, which is both our board and our commission, which regulates really the retail side of the business for us. So a little bit about why we are regulated. A little history lesson. So back in the late 1800s, when they first started electrifying cities, they used direct current. On the picture on the left side is some direct current machines that generate. Direct current does not travel very far, so they had to be local to the areas they were generating electricity in. And they weren't regulated. These were started by Thomas Edison. And the picture on the right is, I counted, it's 9 cross arms in each direction. And so you had all these different electric providers that were stringing wires all over the cities, and you can see it actually darkened the skies from all the wires. They moved from direct current to alternating current, which allowed them to move the generators out of the population area, and it could travel, the electricity could travel farther. So we went from many providers to fewer providers. And so they decided to put in regulation for both public safety as well as economics. And really what they fashioned it through was the railroad commissions. And so as you'll know, in Texas, before 1975, the electric industry was regulated by the Railroad Commission. Today, still, the natural gas industry is They don't regulate railroads anymore, but they do the natural gas industry. So that's how we acquired this regulatory framework within the utility industry. And over time, we've had a number of key events that triggered that here in Texas. So biggest one is, ERCOT, which we all talked about, was actually created in 1970, and it was to implement NERC standards. And then the Public Utility Commission of Texas was created in 1975, and that took over the electric industry. Then in 1995 was Senate Bill 373, which deregulated the generation portion of the business. So these are the generators. Then in 1999, Senate Bill 7 moved us to deregulate the retail markets. Now, this required a lot of planning. It took almost 11 years from the time they passed Senate Bill 7 until they deregulated those retail side, and we had the nodal market, which is what we have today. And really what the nodal market is about is prior to the nodal market, there were 5 pricing areas. You had north, south, east, west, and Houston. And so we've gone from 5 pricing zones to 17,000 nodes. So in theory, price could be different, all 17,000 nodes due to congestion and transmission constraints and generators being down. And so each one of those have a different pricing point. And the idea is that it gives a more specific price to send price signals to customers and to generators to respond. And so that has really complicated the market in terms of being an operator, with the idea it enhances competition and can lower prices for the deregulated side of the house. That hasn't necessarily been true, but that was the intent. So ERCOT is one of 3 interconnection systems, Western Interconnect, Eastern Interconnect, and ERCOT. And as you can see, ERCOT is the only one that's totally within one state. So as a result, we are not regulated by the federal government, by FERC, because it's intrastate commerce. All systems have to comply with NERC. But one of the simplicity things about ERCOT is because we don't have all these different interconnected systems, we have one, the ERCOT system is, it's a balancing issue. And so other parts of the country have multiple balancing authorities, and managing the power flow through those systems become much more difficult. We just have one, which is ERCOT. So they are our single balancing authority. Why this is easy is it's technically easier to manage. It's less regulation because you don't have the feds coming in on you. But there's a downside to it. During Winter Storm Uri, there was plenty of power in Western Connect and Eastern Connect, but we couldn't get any because we weren't connected. So that's the downside, is we're in isolation down here in Texas. And so within ERCOT, they manage the flow of power to about 26 million customers, or about 90% of Texas. There's 1,100 generators and over 52,000 miles of transmission lines. Another important part they pay is they're the financial settlement for the competitive wholesale market. And so all the players they're buying and selling power and using transmission all flow through ERCOT. It's like a clearinghouse for them. And some of the key things that about ERCOT is they are regulated by the Public Utility Commission of Texas, but as you probably know, they are highly influenced both the governor and the state legislature. They often have hearings at state legislature on ERCOT. And their 4 primary responsibilities is to maintain the electric system reliability, facilitate a competitive wholesale market, ensure open access to transmission, and facilitate a competitive retail market. And all of these things impact the rates that we charge our customers. So that's why it's important to understand this when we're setting rates. And finally, ERCOT is a balancing authority. We sell all power that we produce into the ERCOT market, and we buy all power we need to serve our customers through the ERCOT market. And so we no longer have to balance our own power. ERCOT does that. Our job is to balance the dollars on behalf of our customers. Both Senate Bill 373 and Senate Bill 7 created a framework that created a lot of different players within ERCOT with a lot of different acronyms, and they all do something different. So first is a qualified scheduling entity, or some people call it a queasy. Queasies, they schedule and dispatch power. And so everyone who's either a load serving entity or a resource entity has to have a queasy to schedule that. You can either do it yourself or you can outsource it. A resource entity is simply someone who has generation resources. Calpine, EPUB, we have a resource. We're a resource entity. Transmission and Distribution Service Provider, or TDSPs. This is a title that's really reserved for the IOUs like CenterPoint, AEP, and Encore. And so they're the wires company or the wires co, right? So they're connecting the generators with the retail side. Those are regulated by the PUC. Their rates are established by the PUC, their service standards. And so that's really isolated to those IOUs. We have transmission service providers, of which BPUB is one of those. We have transmission lines and distribution service providers. BPUB is also one of those, but so is Magic Valley, but they don't have transmission side, they're just distribution. And those, again, are the wired side of the house. Finally, there's load serving entities. So these are people that own customers, that service customers, and they're broken up into a couple of different groups. The deregulated side of the market, retail electric providers, they're the ones that market power, that aggregate all of the costs for you. They produce your bill and they send a bill and you pay that retail electric provider. If you're a non-opted entity, you have to be a muni or a co-op, and that, like BPUB does, where we have the customer, plus we provide all that wire, the distribution and transmission side, and we sell them the energy. And so we are like a rep, but we're a non-opted muni, in that if you're a customer of BPUB within our CCN area, you don't have the option to go out and contact one of these retail electric providers to provide that energy to you. You have to buy it through BPUB. So I've already hit on some of these, but we have a number of functions that we play in here because of how we're configured. So Forces, we are a resource entity. We own and control generation resources. And so those prices are set to the wholesale market. And you, the board, decide which resources that we will use in our resource generation plan. And so that's coming up at the end of the year. You'll have an option. Do we use gas generation, renewable, nuclear? Do we want to participate? Do we want to own it, or do you want to do a PPA? That's your option. The next is a transmission service provider. We operate transmission lines. And so those high voltage part of the bulk electric system, again, it's regulated by NERC, and those rates are set by the Public Utility Commission of Texas. And so we do that periodically. We go for the PUC with a transmission cost of service that you'll be getting in a few years here, and those set those rates for us. We earn revenue. Our retail customers do not pay for our transmission system. Capital investments are recovered from all other load serving entities. They socialize those costs, and then they charge all the load serving entities based upon how much demand they place on that system, called 4CP, or 4 coincident peak: June, July, August, and September. And so the more demand you have, the more of these transmission costs you have to pick up. So we bill all the other load service entities to get that revenue, and we get an imputed rate of return. And so I think it's around 13% was our last, if I recall right. So you can imagine if you can borrow at 4% and earn at 13%, that's a pretty good deal. So there's incentives to invest in transmission. Distribution service provider, that's the low voltage side that you see strung all over our town. That connects our customers from the transmission side of the house to their homes and businesses. The city commission approves those base rates, which you recommend, and that includes all the costs associated with that distribution system. So our retail customers do pay for that piece. We're a load serving entity, a non-opt-in entity, meaning our customers can't pick who their energy provider is. And so we package up that, and they get a bill from us to each of those retail customers, including the distribution costs, the transmission costs, the power cost. Finally, we ourselves are not a qualified scheduling entity, but we outsource that to Tenaska. So Tenaska, we're in constant communication with them. They submit our load requirements on behalf of us as a load serving entity. And they also submit our power schedules as a resource entity. So that's how we interact with the ERCOT market. A couple things is we are obligated to serve our customers with our CCN. And that's granted by the Public Utility Commission of Texas. We are a NOE, load serving entity, so we bundle all those costs and we take care of our customer that way. We do not have to own generation to provide customers with energy. I mean, we don't have to own steel. There's several other ways to provide that energy, and we do all of these. We have bilateral, which is a private buy-sell negotiation. We have power purchase agreements, which are really nothing but a long-term bilateral agreement. There's a day-ahead market. So this morning we were buying power for tomorrow's delivery based upon our forecast. And there's a real-time market. So if a generator goes down and we don't have an offsetting power, we go out to the real-time market and we buy power prices, whatever it's going for at that time. Sometimes that's more economic. And we currently use a combination of all of these as a way to reduce those costs for our customers for power. And I said, the revenue we earn by selling that generation is used to offset the cost of purchasing the power. So it acts as a physical hedge for us. So that's the reason why we have generation. So a comparison that, there's three types of utilities in Texas. There's municipally owned utilities, of which there are 72 of them. There's member-owned cooperatives like Magic Valley, and there's 76 of those. And there's retail electric providers. These are the commercial entities that sell power in the deregulated market. I counted this morning, there's 269 of those as of today. The number goes up now almost every day. And so all of those are selling services to customers in the market. If you're a customer, if you're a MOU or a co-op, there is no comparative retail market, right? So you can't go and buy your power from Tri-Eagle or some other provider or NRT. You can, if you're a retail electric provider, you go on to Power to Choose at the website. You select who you want to provide your power. That customer can do that. Not all 269, but who's ever offering contracts at that time in your area, and you can buy power from them at whatever rate and contract that you decide. Commercial customers negotiate contracts. They're not public information, so we don't know what commercial customers are paying for on a regular basis. On a distribution side, if you're a muni or co-op, those costs and rates are set by either your council, commission, or board, or if you're a cooperative, they have a board that sets those rates. If you're provided by a retail electric provider, the PUC sets those rates. On the transmission side, everyone's the same. The PUC sets the rates. Those costs are socialized. They give into reps, MOUs, and co-ops based upon their 4CP. Finally, the power side, everyone participates in the wholesale market. So those power prices fluctuate a lot based upon supply and demand, and those prices get passed through to the end user or those customers. So how we operate here. So we are what used to be called a vertically integrated utility. We still operate that way. So we have generation. About 360 megawatts. That includes both our own and PPAs. And there's a number of regulators, PUC, ERCOT, EPA, TCEQ, NERC, amongst the various others. We then transmit that power to our distribution. I would note that these are circuits, not linear miles. We have about 50 linear miles of transmission line. And again, NERC, ERCOT, PUC, EPA, TCEQ regulate that function. That's the bulk electric system we talk about. And finally, there's distribution. That those are regulated by FCC pole attachments that you hear about this evening. EPA, TCEQ, our city commission sets those costs, and the board of directors sets the policies there. And finally, there's customers. We have about 53,000 electric customers. They pay their rates that the commission approves, and they abide by the standards that our board sets. So that's how we operate. One interesting thing here to know about Brownsville, and it's really unique to this area, is we have a very unique combination of service territories. So we have single, dual, and triple certificated areas. So when we talk about those CCNs, there's some overlap. Customers starting new service have some options there. And then we have other agreements with the AEP within the city of Brownsville. So you could have a customer on one side of the street buying served by a totally different utility on the other side of the street. So that's true within the city of Brownsville and outside of Brownsville we serve. So it's a complicated service territory given a very confined area. But I think that's kind of a unique map here. Finally, I wanted to give you, these aren't questions for you to answer today, but might be questions you might think about as we bring to you our cost of service study, our integrated resource plan, our strategic plan, our transmission cost of service, about how we operate in ERCOT and how that influences the decision you as a board might make. And so we can pick these up later, but I just wanted to plant a seed that these are some things you should probably be asking yourself to ask us. With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
I have a pop quiz for everybody in the room. And this is in lieu of me lecturing about it. But, well, two-part question. Why does DC power not travel nearly as far as AC power? And then, yeah, as the hint, why do we care about low voltage versus high voltage? Don't have to answer it now, but I feel like everybody in this room should know sooner or later.
Okay. Want to answer that? Yeah.
Not in public.
Okay. Any other questions?
That's all I got.
Okay. Very good. Thank you for the presentation. And then we have one item for consideration and closed meeting, presentation, discussion, possible recommendation of information upon pricing of purchase power generation and fuel and their impact upon the fuel purchase energy and marketing charge. So do we have a motion to go into closed meeting pursuant to Texas Government Code 551?
I will move to go into closed meeting.
Okay, second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and adjourn to closed meeting, recess into closed meeting, excuse me. Okay. It is 12:57 and we are reconvening an open meeting. There was no action taken in the closed meeting. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Okay, I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.